Okay, here's a selection from Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. I heartily accept the motto, that government is best which governs least. And I should like to see it acted up to more rapidly and systematically. Carried out, it finally amounts to this, which I also believe, that government is best which governs not at all. And when men are prepared for it, that will be the kind of government with which they will have. Okay, so first he says, hey, the less the government gets involved, the better. But then he amends that to say, hey, actually, it'd be great if we didn't have to have government at all, right? In fact, he would prefer not having government. He's a bit of an anarchist in that way, right? No government, okay? But he acknowledges that, hey, when men are prepared for it, that's what he wants. So notice he acknowledges people are not prepared for anarchy. They are not prepared for a system in which there is no government, or I guess a systemless system, okay? But he says that is what he'd prefer, but for right now, he's calling for less government. Government is at best but an expedient, but most governments are usually, and all governments are sometimes, inexpedient. Okay, so he kind of uses these words here that I think are important to define. He says government is basically an expedient, which means it's a means to an end. We've got to have it in order to make people feel better or whatever. It says it's something that is convenient. It is something that is convenient but immoral. Okay, that's what an expedient is. So he says government is basically convenient but immoral, but most governments are usually, and all governments are sometimes, inexpedient, which means impractical or inconvenient, okay? The objections which have been brought against a standing army, and they are many and weighty and deserve to prevail, may also at last be brought against a standing government. The standing army is only an arm of the standing government. So he's saying essentially, when we are upset with wars, we should not be blaming the armies. We should be blaming the government who is sending the armies. The government itself, which is only the mode which the people have chosen to execute their will, is equally liable to be abused and perverted before the people can act through it. Remember, especially in a democracy, the goal is for the people to have a voice in a democracy. Here he's saying, you know what? The government is so screwed up that it doesn't even allow the people's voice to be heard anymore. Instead, it gets twisted before the people can even have a chance to say what they want. Witness this present Mexican war, the work of comparatively a few individuals using the standing government as their tool. For in the outset, the people would not have consented to this measure. This is the reason why Henry David Thoreau was in prison as he wrote this. He decided he didn't want to pay taxes. Hey, that sounds good, right? No taxes. Except that he had a very specific reason for why he didn't want to pay taxes. It was the Mexican-American War. He did not approve of it, and so he thought, why am I paying money to a government who is supporting a war that I don't support? And so he decided he wasn't going to pay his taxes. That's not recommended. Just because you disagree with something in the government, you still have to pay taxes, or else you're going to pay for it, which he did by going to prison. This American government, what is it but a tradition, though a recent one, endeavoring to transmit itself unimpaired to posterity, but each instant losing some of its integrity? It has not the vitality and force of a single living man, for a single man can bend it to his will. It is a sort of wooden gun to the people themselves, and if they ever should use it in earnest as a real one against each other, it will surely split. Okay, so he's saying it's basically like a toy gun. It's not really of any use. It's just there to play with, or with a wooden gun, it would look the part but not actually fulfill its duty, right? A wooden gun is not actually going to shoot or protect you, but it'll look good if you put it in a holster, I guess. I don't know. But it is not the less necessary for this. So he does acknowledge that government does have a purpose. For the people must have some complicated machinery or other, and here it's to satisfy that idea of government which they have. So basically he says it's just a comfort to the people. Governments show thus how successfully men can be imposed on, even impose on themselves for their own advantage. It is excellent, we must all allow, yet this government never of itself furthered any enterprise, but by the alacrity with which it got out of its way. It does not keep the country free. It does not settle the West. It does not educate. The character inherent in the American people has done all that has been accomplished, and it would have done somewhat more if the government had not sometimes got in its way. I love this part. He basically says the government doesn't do anything. It's the people that does everything, right? It does not keep the country free. Who does that? Soldiers. It does not settle the West. Who does that? The settlers, or the people that are, I don't know, I can't think of the word for them, but the people that explorers. There you go. It does not educate. Guess what? I do, right? Teachers educate. Okay, so it's saying that, hey, the government itself isn't doing it. It's actual people that are doing it. For government is an expedient by which men would fain succeed in letting one another alone, and as has been said, when it is most expedient, the governed are most let alone by it. He's saying the best kind of government is one that just gets out of the people's way. Trade and commerce, if they were not made of India rubber, would never manage to bounce over the obstacles with which legislators are continually putting in their way. And if one were to judge these men wholly by the effects of their actions and not partly by their intentions, they would deserve to be classed and punished with those mischievous persons who put obstructions on the railroads. But to speak practically and as a citizen, unlike those who call themselves no government men, I ask not at once for no government, but at once for a better government. Let every man make known what kind of government would command his respect, and that will be one step toward obtaining it.